into the third hour. I have another hour coming up. We're here live Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central Time. That's 12 noon to 4 p.m. And we are joined by Bob Chapman, the founder of the International Forecaster. He worked in Army intelligence. He then had one of the biggest newsletters in history till he retired. He came back out of retirement to restart his financial newsletter. And his predictions are some of the most accurate and stunning out there. He was one of the biggest private gold and silver brokers ever. He helped publish Gary Allen's None Dare Call It Conspiracy in the early 1970s. He is a real icon in the fight against the globalists for the last 45 years. And today is his 74th, or is it 75th birthday? How old are you today, Bob?
I'm 74, and I'm happy to report that I'm healthy and everything works.
That's awesome. Look, I don't want to toot your horn here, but I want people to pay attention to what you're saying. Everything you've talked about years before, and you call it when it's going to happen, is now happening. You called 2 years ago on this show that late 2009, 2010 early was when they'd start really killing the dollar. You called the stock market going back up. 2 years ago, you said it would go down in a year, then it would go back up in 2009, that it would then go down again. You called that gold by the fall would run up well above 1,000. I mean, I want the crystal ball you've got. But also on top of all this, Bob Chapman, I want listeners, not our mainline listeners, but the show's growing by leaps and bounds. All these new listeners on all these new AM and FM stations understand we're just going off the documents. The Club of Rome, the Bank of England, all these, the private Federal Reserve have said they're setting up a Bank of the World we'll pay carbon taxes to. They are the ones killing the dollar. They are the ones that have stolen tens of trillions. They are the ones setting up a police state to stop the American and British and other people from taking our government back and bringing these Madoff / Skilling / Ken Lay types to justice. So either these guys take over the world through their Ponzi scheme fraud. That's the New World Order. It's tyranny. Set up their Bank of the World, which they're now calling for, banks, the private banks to have the regulatory power over all businesses. That's even on Napolitano's Fox News show. I mean, this is really happening. I want people to realize the magnitude of, we're not saying the New World Order is coming now. It's now here, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So I want to lay out what their master plan is, who they are, what their economic warfare operation is, and what the death of the dollar is going to look like. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former head of the Treasury, former Wall Street Journal editor, the father of Reaganomics, he said he believes it's irreversible. He now agrees it's by design. 2 years ago, he knew they were doing it, but couldn't come to that realization. They're now Soros is openly bragging. I mean, this is so incredible, and I want people to realize we are now here. The hell is now going to begin while they're simultaneously telling us we have a jobless recovery and everything's wonderful. Bob Chapman.
Everything is not wonderful. And we're not going to get a recovery, and it's as simple as that. If you remember back in January, I said that I thought that by the end of the year, the people in Washington and Wall Street would be talking about another stimulus plan, and now they are. They're talking in terms of $200 billion. I projected $2 trillion, and that's what they need to make this thing continue to hum. And so let's see what they come up with. But I think there's a good chance there's going to be another stimulus program. It'll be larger than the one that they did, which is $787 billion. We'll say $800 billion. It just really hasn't done hardly anything. Two reasons. They're not really creating anything. They're just throwing money at the problem. And number two, the layout of the plan was done extremely poorly. It was done politically, and now they're very afraid that the stimulus plan is not going to carry the economy in a positive mode into the election, and they're scrambling to get more money. The key to all of this is money. The key is the control of the production of money, and that's done by the Federal Reserve, the private corporation, and it's also done by the Bank of England. And yes, as Alex said, they are now expediting into a world currency, whether it'll be an SDR, special depository receipt, which is issued by the IMF, or whether it'll be a basket of currencies say the G20 with a small goal backing of 10 to 15%. We don't know yet, but that's where they're headed, so that they can have an international trading unit, and they intend to follow that by having an international one world currency.
Now, Bob, for new listeners that don't understand, they're not going to see some gold or purple or blue money day one. We'll still have our regional currencies, euro, dollar, dollarized Canada and Mexico, but they've announced at the G20 the new Bank of the World will set currency values, which will allow the insiders to even engage in bigger Ponzi schemes and manipulations. They will set interest rates globally, and that's why instead of G20 meeting once a year, they're meeting every 2-3 months now in private. And they're saying in the publications, mainline publications, Financial Times and others, that it's going to be a basket of SDR, bank-to-bank fiat currency, that it's going to be a basket of the yen and the yuan and the Indian money and the European Union money, the euro. But the media is also spinning it, saying the Arabs are killing the dollar. Is it not the policies of the private Federal Reserve pumping tens of trillions of these out into the economy that is killing the dollar?
Well, it's the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England are the two keys. But I look at this from a psychopolitical aspect. They are going to go into inflation, higher inflation. Real inflation right now is 6.11%. And those are John Williams' figures, incidentally. You can look at it at 601 as well. There's two ways of getting to the conclusion of the product. And so that's going to increase. We'll probably see over the next year and a half, while they're preparing this international trading unit they call, and this evolutionary process will continue to cause inflation until they decide to pull the plug and go to deflation and go to the international unit, and to see the dollar go to 40 on the USDX. Today it's around 75. So you can see that we're not all that far away, and it's come down from 124. And so what are we looking at? We're looking at probably another 40% to 50% change in the value of the dollar versus 6 major currencies. And they're weighted against each other. And so this is where we're headed in the immediate future. Alex and I and Paul Craig Roberts were on together, and we both said 2 to 3 years. Well, I think we're down to 1.5 to 2 right now. And that's when I think they're going to stick it in. And so what does that put us? Mid-2011 to the end of 2011, somewhere in there.
Let me break this down for people. Let me throw a question in here. The method to the madness, having big Bilderberg Group, big New World Order owned, Reuters, Financial Times of London, Wall Street Journal, come out and take the shock off so there isn't a big panic and start announcing we've got to devalue the dollar. It's going to happen incrementally. National Post reported, New York Post reported yesterday that the dollar is no longer the world reserve currency, saying that China, India, Russia, Europe, and others still have a majority dollars, but now the majority of their new purchases are euros and another basket. And so it seems they're just acclimating everyone, so Americans just accept the devaluation of the currency, rising prices while we have depression in the real economy, so losing your job, lower wages, while the economy falls apart. So that's worse than the Great Depression, where it was a depression in prices and a depression in wages. We're talking about hyper-stagflation here. And so I guess, why are they now announcing, okay, we are getting rid of the dollar? Is that just to get everybody ready?
Yes, it is. And I think the piece that was done by Fisk this past week, which dealt with secret meetings among those who didn't want the dollar anymore, such as Russia, China, India, the Arab states, Brazil, Venezuela, Iran. That was deliberately leaked by him, that he was told to do that. And that was conditioning. They're going to ease it down. It's going down. They'll do the dialectics with it. 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back.